that dog, you know, the Pavlov, check email, check messages, check notifications, that drools and salivates when, you know, the lever is pulled or whatever that experiment is. That's what it's like with a smartphone for me, so yeah. Hi everyone, and welcome to Pal to Tech. You know, the cameras that come with your average smartphone these days are so good and can capture such high quality video that I'm myself starting to use them more often than not as a backup camera, something that I use for behind the scenes stuff, B-roll footage, and so forth. Now, I've used Sandmarc filters before, but always on my drone cameras. Now, although Sandmarc was kind enough to send us these smartphone filters, like always, this review is completely unbiased. I am not being paid by Sandmarc to do this review. What you get in the box is pretty simple. You get a basic flip-out carrying case that contains 3 separate filters: an ND16, an ND32, and an ND64. These represent a 4, 5, and 6-stop reduction in light. You also get this clip-on mount which attaches the filter to the phone. And the filters are large, so they cover all 3 lenses of the phone, just like this. The filters are well made. The outer ring is made out of metal, and this is mounted to a plate that's made out of sturdy plastic. This then screws onto the holder just like that, and then just clips on the phone. The whole package of filters is about $130. Now, these are a little different than normal neutral density filters because they contain a built-in polarizing filter. So to use the polarizer filter, you simply turn the filter just like that. However, once it's on the camera, it is always acting as a neutral density filter, sort of 2-in-1. For those of you that don't know, a polarizer filter helps reduce light reflections in water and foliage. Now take a look at this shot. You can kind of see that Piper's there, and I wound up turning. As I turn the polarizer filter, look at that. There she is. See that? Check it out. So as you can see, just by rotating the filter and using the polarizer filter part, I'm able to cut the glare reflection in the glass and bring out Piper. What a good girl. Here's another example of a shot I took just holding the camera without the polarizing filter. Let's look at them side by side. And as you can see, it does cut the glare. It doesn't make the glare go away, but it does reduce it. Frankly though, I didn't find the polarizer feature of these filters all that incredibly useful to me. It's not that they're bad, it's just that the real benefit of these filters is the neutral density filter. A neutral density, or ND filter, is simply a pair of sunglasses for your camera. It evenly darkens everything so that you can use slower shutter speeds. Here's the thing about smartphone cameras. You cannot change their aperture. You can only change the ISO and the shutter speed. So the aperture on a smartphone is fixed. So for example, on the default camera on the iPhone 11, it's fixed at an aperture of f1.8. That's the aperture you're stuck with. So here's the problem. What do you do if you're outside on a bright sunny day and you want to shoot at a really slow shutter speed to, say, emphasize water motion? On a Fujifilm camera, this is an easy adjustment of balancing out the aperture, the ISO, and the shutter speed using the dials. You have complete control over the camera. On a smartphone, the first thing you need to do is install an app that allows you to take complete control over the camera settings. Remember, you cannot control the aperture, but you can control the shutter speed and the ISO. I happen to use an app called Pro Camera, but you could also use the free Lightroom Mobile, which is a great solution. So back to our example. I'm outside in the bright sunlight. I want to blur the water. If I just whip out my phone and I go to, take the photo, as you can see here, the iPhone shows a default shutter speed of 1/965th of a second with the lowest ISO that the camera can go to, ISO 32. But let's say I want to blur the water. Well, 1/965th of a second is not going to do that. it's too fast. I need a shutter speed of something like 1/6 of a second or something. The only option available to me would be to reduce my shutter speed so I could capture the blur of the water. However, as I start to reduce the shutter speed, because the smartphone cannot lower the ISO any further, the scene begins to blow out, and that sucks. However, by placing a filter over the phone and darkening the camera image, I'm able to reduce the shutter speed down to 1/6 of a second, and now I have nice motion blur. I can then take the shot, which of course you want the phone attached to a tripod if you're shooting at that low of a shutter speed. But the bottom line is that this is the kind of shot that would be very difficult, if not impossible, to get on a phone without an ND filter. Now, while having an ND filter certainly helps for still photography, it really makes a difference for video. So what I'm about to tell you now, even if you never pick up a phone for shooting video, you can definitely apply the same principle for your Fujifilm or other mirrorless camera. The key to cinematic video is shooting at the proper frame rate. The frame rate that you choose when you shoot video matters. And this is because when someone is watching your video, you want them to see motion in your video that closely resembles what that motion would look like to the human eye in real life. If you don't have the correct frame rate set on your camera, your motion and your video will look weird, kind of like you see here. Ugh. Not good. You must follow the 180-degree rule. Basically, this rule states that whenever you shoot video, your shutter speed should always be set to double your frame rate. So for example, if you have your video settings on the Fujifilm camera set to 30 frames per second, then your shutter speed should be 1/60. If you're shooting at 60 frames per second, then your shutter speed should be 1/120, and so forth. As you know, different frame rates will give you different sort of looks in your video. The higher the frame rate, the more realistic, television-y, soap opera-y your video is going to look as a general rule. I don't particularly care for high frame rates, and I can see them on YouTube. Sometimes you will see YouTube videos and they just look, extremely realistic. Just this video just right in front of you realistic, and you look, and in YouTube you can see it'll say 60p or 60 frames per second. If you want to achieve a cinematic look that would match what you see in a movie theater, you want to shoot at 24 frames per second. Have a look at this. Do you see the difference? Do you see how much better that looks? Kind of what you feel a waterfall would look like. But just like in the still photographs, if you're out there trying to shoot video and you want to lower it down to 1/48 of a second as your shutter speed so that you're double your frame rate of 24 frames a second, unless you have an SD filter on the phone, you're going to blow out your highlights. There's going to be too much light coming in. These are critically important for video. Overall, I found these filters to be very straightforward and easy to use. And having a polarizing filter built in it's a nice touch. And these filters are very useful for videography, as I mentioned earlier, in getting the right frame rate. That being said, for myself personally, I'm not going to be using a smartphone to replace my camera anytime soon. It's highly distracting for me. When I have the phone with me and I open it up and I'm just kind of holding it, I'm like that dog, the Pavlov, check email, check notifications, work. However, if you do prefer to use your smartphone more and more for videography or photography, then having an ND filter kit for your smartphone will definitely help you achieve a more cinematic look to your footage and give you more control over your photography. And these Sandmarc filters are great for that. I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, you know what to do. And I will see you in another video real soon. Take care. This then screws on. This then screws on